I'm Randy Laroche, and I'm an upper second tenor, originally just a second tenor. I first joined the chorus in February of 1981. So I've been affiliated with the chorus 39 years, in and out a couple of times. I grew up in the South Bay, Atherton, which I'll talk about as we go along in our interview.
Tell me about how you first heard about the chorus.
I first heard about the chorus basically just word of mouth from people. I was interested from the very beginning. This must have been about 1979, but I had no idea really how to join because, of course, there was no internet and it wasn't listed really anywhere. It was just, new people. And so I was wanting to join. The first person I met was in 1980. His name was Tom Geschwind. He's now sadly with the fifth section. And so I arranged to have an audition very soon after that.
What was the audition like?
The first audition I had was kind of overwhelming because it was Dick Kramer was then the conductor, and the national tour was on the horizon already. So new members were supposed to have really strong sight reading ability, which I didn't have. I hadn't sung in a number of years, and so I wasn't initially taken. I auditioned in September of 1980, but I wasn't going to take that. I wasn't going to take that standing out. So I stood up and I said, okay, I'll study with you privately for a while, prove I have a voice, and work on this, which I did for a few months. And then I was accepted February 2nd, 1981, one of the last members they took before the national tour.
When did the tour start?
Tour started 39 years ago last weekend. It was June. It went on for 2 weeks.
Wow. And where did you go?
Okay, we started here in San Francisco. We had a farewell concert at the Warfield Theater on Market Street, and then we went to Dallas, which was our first performance, then to Lincoln, Nebraska, then to Minneapolis, then to Detroit, then to Washington, D.C., then to Boston, and then to Seattle. And I think I've named them all.
That is quite a trip.
It really was. We were really excited. There were 150 of us. We thought that's huge, which of course compared to today is about half the size we are. But it was really exciting because we were doing something that had never been done before. We were getting positive publicity. We did our best, and it was very exciting. But we came back to stark reality afterwards.
Right. Did you also go on the Lavender Pen tour?
I did. I'm one of 3 members of the chorus that went on the 81 tour and also on the Lavender Pen.
Tell me a little bit about that sort of compare and contrast between the two.
Well, compare and contrast. For the first one, we had no idea how well attended the performances would be. They were all set up, but we really didn't know. And we were very well received everywhere we went, but the performances sadly were underattended. Quite underattended. In some places, it was pretty evident. And that haunted us for the next decade because we went into severe debt after the tour was over. We continued to sing, but still there was that cloud over us. And the AIDS epidemic began very soon after that. And that went on for quite some time. But we stuck together. We supported each other. We continued to sing. We continued to build our audience. And the proudest thing for me was we galvanized the gay choral movement nationwide and eventually worldwide, which I'm very, very proud to have been a participant in the early years.
It's amazing now to see gala choruses everywhere when they weren't there before. So tell me a little bit about what it was like in those years after the tour, the early 80s, where it was kind of the beginning of the AIDS crisis, where nobody really knew what was happening.
Yeah, it was scary. It was distant from us for a while. We didn't begin losing members that I remember till 1984, it was a couple of years after it started. And yeah, we were scared. We went through inner turmoil. We had a change of directorship. We had to change where we rehearsed several times because either we couldn't afford the space we were in or the church would ever wanted to use it for some other purpose. So there was a lot of turnover. There was a lot of uncertainty. But still, we always held out hope. And the gala movement started very soon after that. The first one was in 1982, the same time as the Gay Olympics, which we were soon not permitted to refer to as such, here in San Francisco. And that was exciting because it was basically just West Coast, Vancouver to the north, to Denver in the east, and California in that area. And these groups, some of them were just less than a year old then starting. And so that was really fun and exciting to be a part of. But again, the cloud was on the horizon, and the AIDS epidemic continued, and it took more and more of our members. But we stuck together. We got through it all. And that I'm very proud of in retrospect.
One of the things that struck me the last time we talked is that you've kept a journal this whole time.
Yeah.
It's remarkable to have a record like that. So tell me a little bit about the role of journaling during those years.
Okay, well, I kept journals before. In the 1970s, I spent a year wandering around Europe all by myself, and I kept journals then. But when I moved to San Francisco in 78, I stopped. But I started again in 1985 for two reasons. Number one, my partner and I then owned our first building, which we were renovating, and we had to hire an attorney at one point for some legal counsel. And he recommended keeping a daily journal just for reference for that. And that, of course, at the same time as when the AIDS epidemic was starting to take personal friends of mine in 1985. So that's when I started doing it. Initially just for those two reasons, but eventually for a lot of other ones as well. And I've kept it up every day ever since. I was 30 years old, and here I am now 65, still going at it.
It's so amazing. I kick myself when I think about it. I wish that I'd kept a daily journal. I am now. I'm trying to now, but what a treasure to be able to look back in that way.
Yeah, it is. And I'm really glad because a lot of things are in there. The Loma Prieta earthquake, the galas that we went on together, having to leave chorus sadly and always being happy to come back, which I've done 2 times now. So I've sung in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and 60s.
Tell me about growing up and coming out. What was that like for you?
Okay, well, I grew up in the Bay Area in Menlo Park, where my parents moved when I was an infant. And I'd always known I was gay, but I didn't want to admit it for a long time because there were really no role models and there was nobody I could relate to. So it was rough that way. And I think I had quasi homophobic harassment going back as far as maybe kindergarten. And it became more pronounced when I reached puberty in high school. And it was rough. But then again, I overcame it. Somehow I realized that, life would go on. There was not the sense of support which we enjoy today. But still, somehow I just managed and I got by. I can give you some specifics, cases. Well, for example, I always loved music. Music was kind of an escape. And I participated a lot in band, orchestra, choir, grammar school, junior high school, and throughout high school, which really helped a lot, took a lot of the pressure away. But there was homophobia there too, especially in the drama department, which in retrospect, I suppose I shouldn't be too surprised at, but it was there. I got teased my one summer, we did Hello Dolly, and this one boy, a couple of years older than me, decided he was going to have fun by calling me a queer and a fag in front of all the guys in the dressing room. And what could I do? I didn't say anything. Nobody else said anything because, peer pressure when you're an adolescent is pretty strong. And at that time, there wasn't much you could do for help. And later, auditioning for roles in the drama department, which I always wanted to do. Being an actor was like having a chance to be somebody else, take on a different identity. The drama coach wouldn't cast me for a number of years. He went on sabbatical my junior year, and I got leading roles in the musical and the drama. He came back my senior year, and there was nothing again. So I finally got up the nerve and talked to him. He told me, well, your movements are too effeminate. And, I was 17. This was 1972. And I thought, oh, But then he said, wait a minute, we're going to do Shakespeare's Twelfth Night next spring. Come and audition. Maybe I can get you in. And he did. He gave me a role and made me act even more effeminate in the role, which I was uncomfortable at, but I would do anything for at least 5 minutes of approval and the chance to be on stage and the chance to be somebody else. So I did. And that was, one example of, I guess you could say, pre-coming out awareness, uncomfortableness, but ability to go on and be a little more introspective and looking ahead.
What about later? One of the other stories I remember well is talking about coming out to your students.
Well, in a nutshell, my father died when I was 20, and so I was getting Social Security as well as going to college full time. And then in 1978, I moved back to the city for good, which I've been ever since. And my education, my master's degree and later Ph.D. equivalent were in adult education, ESL. So yes, I developed lessons many years later. This wasn't until after 2000. And the reason I waited so long is it's a touchy subject for us. And it's a very touchy subject when you have students from all over the world, from cultures from all over, where being gay is everything from don't ask, don't tell to outright persecution. So I resisted for a long time. But then I finally decided, wait a minute, they're in San Francisco. This is very visible. They should have it introduced to them in a positive way. And however they choose to react is their choice. But this is a part of life I really think that they should know. And so I did develop lessons in which my spouse and I, not spouses yet at that point, were featured in the lessons as well as other things, including the Gay Men's Chorus. I use that as a very positive way of showing the gay community from how it started in 1978 until then, and what we've been through and what we've survived, and the message and the mission and the hope that we gave forward. That's what I did.